Hello and welcome to the Traveling Homesteader and Gyroscope Farm. Today we're just going to do a little bit of a review on some things. So as a review of what my goal is with this channel is to help people become more self-reliant in 5 different areas. And those 5 areas are education, finance, emergency preparedness, food storage, and gardening and CSAs, or community supported agriculture. And we've been touching on several of those in the last several videos. The last one being gardening and transplanting some plants. But I also wanted to touch base on the importance of kind of education. Now, as it relates to self-reliance, I'm using that as a little bit more global sense. Because I think having a variety of learning opportunities is really important. Now, as far as specific education, that's something I'm going to leave to people to do on their own. But I want to make people aware that there are different opportunities depending on what your end goal is. I know for me, I ended up coming from New England, where in my personal family and my environment was more conducive to people were really pushing the idea of going to college and getting a degree and having a career in a certain area. And so for me, I did go to college. I got my bachelor's degree, I got my master's degree. But I also then kind of took it a little bit further and decided to go to private school for high school. So from grade 9 on, I have a bill essentially for my education. Not everybody's going to want to do that or can do that. But I ended up getting a master's degree in education because that's part of what my job needed. So becoming a teacher, you need to have a degree in it, whether it's a bachelor's or a master's, depending on where you live. So depending on what you want to do for your job, you may need to get a degree. But if you want to be able to get into the workforce without going to college or going through such a long process, you could find another way to learn. And so that's why today I want to kind of go a little bit into that you have opportunities to go to, community colleges, four-year universities, doing online, doing in person. And that's kind of the cool part about today's day and age, is that we have a whole host of options. Now, I got talking with a gal that I know just the other night, and we were talking about this, and she's wanting to become a social worker. And the first thing that came to my mind was just make sure what you need to have to be a social worker. And she said that she'd looked into it, and that part of what she had seen was that having life experience was one of the options. But the other option was to have a degree in social work. So having life experience is being taken as important experience. So that's why I say look into what you want to do for work, because that's going to be your income and how you can make your money. Now, for some people, doing daycare is what they can do and want to do, and you don't necessarily need education to do that, but some experience and getting some certification to say that your space is clear and safe for children is a good thing. So that's the other end of it, is depending on what your job is, what sort of, certification do you need to have what space you use? Okay. Like, I ended up doing some baking for a period of time, and I needed to make sure that my kitchen was certified through the state of Oregon. So I needed to have the state come in and know what things I had to have for baking breads to sell to people in the cottage industry setting, like at farmers markets. So that's yet another thing to learn. So when we're learning about being self-reliant, and I talk about education, I'm kind of talking more about continuing to learn about different things you want to do so that you're self-reliant. So when we talk about education, it's really kind of a more of a global idea. And I personally really enjoy learning a lot of different things. So I don't necessarily go to school all the time, but I'll go and sit with people about couponing, about I really ended up learning a lot from some women I knew about fiber animals and raising animals so that we could have good product and to spin with and to knit with and to weave with. And that's a whole other world. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Um, so it really depends on your interests as well. But something that I'll actually include some of the websites below is that if you're ever really interested in learning something new and different and you're on a budget, there's a website called edx.org, and that's just simply edx.org. And that's a really cool website. It's not the TEDx Talks, which is another option you can go to as well, but edx.org is where you can actually take college level classes through places like Berkeley, MIT, University System of Maryland, that gives you free college courses in a variety of different topics. So you can actually test out kind of what you want to look at before you even go into that field. So, like, for example, if you know that, Boston University has a really great, law department, but you're kind of concerned about the price tag of taking classes there. Boston University is one of the universities on edx.org that you can take some free classes with, and you can see if they have something that's of interest to you. Do it free here, and then you can kind of go and see if that's of interest to you before you pay out a whole lot of money. If you have the means to pay for it and you want to be able to just test it out in person as you go, you can do that too. But another way that you can do some kind of testing the waters, you might say, is looking at something called teachable.com. And on Teachable, you can check out and learn how to do a variety of other things at a lower cost. Now, something to consider here is Teachable offers a lot of good courses in a wide range of things. Gardening, marketing, technology. But when you get a job, depending on the job, you may need an actual certification. And I know for me as a teacher, I needed to be able to have continuing education courses through what they called accredited schools. And accredited just means licensed and checked out. So, like for me, if I want to keep up my license to be a teacher in Oregon, I need to take a certain amount of continuing education courses that are accredited, and I can either go to a university and take a class, like what's close to me is Oregon State University or University of Oregon. I can take a class or two through either one of those universities that's accredited, or I can go to professional development courses and get units at conferences that I can go to over a period of time. So that's something else too. If you're just wanting to learn how to do something, like change oil in your car, that's something that you can look up on YouTube and find out how to do that. I looked that up online, and it was actually really helpful to see it online for free. It was quick, it was easy, and there's a couple of different options. So depending on what your end goal is, you can find out a lot of cool things. Something else that you might want to consider is a site called Skillshare.com. And Skillshare is learning different skills. And so you can learn painting, floral arranging, a couple of different things, nice range of things. You may have also heard of things like Khan Academy or Udemy. These are other sites that you can look to learn different skills. And in some cases, you can get something of a certificate saying that you completed a certain course or you did a certain amount of work. And that can be helpful too. Now, part of the reason why I bring up some of these things is learning to learn is good, and it helps people develop. Learning to keep things current for a job or opportunities in the future can also be helpful. Now, I ended up taking actually a couple of free classes through a local community college a couple years ago to help me learn how to do business, how to run my own business. And it was through a local business program through the local community college. But they are also offering grants to some of the people within the class as for startup costs and for continuing operational costs. The one thing that happened to come into play there that was rather interesting to me was there was another woman and I who both were trying to do the similar idea of an art studio. And when we got talking with the teacher about it, the other woman had experience. She had, I think, 20, 30 years of teaching experience in teaching people how to paint and do other types of art. But she didn't go to school. She just enjoyed doing it on her own. And she'd learned life skills, you might say, through life experience, different techniques. But I had gone and gotten my bachelor's degree in graphic design, and I'd just finished my master's degree, and I'd actually done some other things along the way to support basically a different career that I was expecting. So when I came to do this business course, the teacher said to us, she used me and this other woman as an example. She said, okay, if we look at these two people just on paper, they both have art experience, they both want to open a studio, they both have this great outline of what they want to do, which would you choose to give the grant to? And that was the bottom line. And I was thinking, this other woman has a whole lot of experience. She gave a great presentation as to why she should deserve to get funding. And I was like, I don't know. And she said that I would more likely get funding because I had invested in myself with my education. So I had invested basically my 4 years of my bachelor's and basically 2 years of a graduate program, which ended up equating out to be about, by this point, it's about $70,000 in education in myself so that I could ultimately teach and have some teaching experience or have some work experience behind me as well. So that's something to consider too, that if you want to get grant money or funding for something, that you need to show that you've put something into yourself that's measurable. Getting a degree, getting a certificate for something that's from a reliable place, that's you're putting investment into yourself that somebody else can say, oh, that's important to her. I'm going to go with that because she or he wants to make sure that we believe what they're doing is important. So that's why when we look at it, if we just want to learn a new skill, say, like in my case, I wanted to learn how to spin fiber or spin animal fiber, so I can learn how to knit and crochet and do all that stuff. That's kind of a different idea. It's more personal. But if you want to do something to kind of promote your career or do something more, that's a little bit different. But in Self-Reliance, we talk about this because, we learn a lot from a lot of different sources and in a lot of different areas. One thing that I ended up watching recently a fair amount on are actually two other websites. There's a man named Justin Rhodes who does permaculture and is doing homesteading. He has a great channel on YouTube, and he's starting up a whole other setup to help people learn and grow by having his own channel. I think on Apple, Hulu, Netflix, a whole host of things. So he's really great. Justin Rhodes. I found him on YouTube. But then also I found a couple named Off Grid with Doug and Stacy, and they're on YouTube as well. And in both cases, they show a lot of good information about farming related items, gardening, permaculture, even creating, like separating milk out, how to use an area of land with goats and or sheep and cows and doing like rotational grazing. And that's something that's important to learn too if you're going to be doing homesteading, or knowing where your food comes from if you're going to garden, knowing how to set up your own garden, knowing where your food comes from if you don't grow it or raise it yourself. So as we learn and grow, being self-reliant and knowing these things, that's what's the more general part that we're going to look at with this channel too. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think about education as far as traditional learning, like going to school, going to high school, college, and further, um, and or continuing your own personal learning to learn how to do things that you may not have learned in school. And that's another case that people are saying that, you know, they go to school and they don't even know how to pay their own taxes, or they don't know how to do personal finances that well, or, change their oil in their car. These are some basic skills that, to be honest, aren't always taught in school. We're taught in school things to a test, and I'll say that straight out. That, and on one hand, that's important to know how to take tests and how to do that sort of thing, but on the other hand, as far as just everyday living, taking tests for tests' sake may not always be what we need. But, so what do you think? So I'd be interested in some comments down below. And remember that if you click to subscribe and give comments and feedback, it helps me know what you're interested in to kind of go forward with that. So tell me what you might be interested in learning in and where you might learn it, and let's see what we can find out from everybody. So hit the subscribe button, and I look forward to hearing from you again.